Nathan, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hey, Josie. Hey, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
I thought it was interesting that Lysander Spooner seems to address both of the calls that came up earlier about, whether or not it's aggression against, or whether or not aggression will be used against you if you don't pay your taxes, and then also the caller who talked about the Constitution, because Lysander Spooner both came up with this, this conclusion that if the Constitution has not been able to prevent the tyranny, then it's either been unable to prevent what we have, or it has endorsed it. In either case, it's not fit to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually, this is a lesser known thing that he said. He actually came up with something called the aggression principle, which is the idea that you probably heard every libertarian tell you at one point or another, which is that if you don't pay your taxes, a guy will come to your door with a clipboard. And if you tell him to go away, then a guy will come back and he'll have some cops with him. And if you tell them to go away, then maybe an armored truck will come back. And, eventually things...
They didn't have armored trucks when Lysander Spooner was around. I don't believe you.
Okay. Well, he used the example of highwaymen, I think. So
okay.
it was men with guns. And
yes.
I think the essence of the principle is this escalation idea, is that and that's what the caller was arguing with somebody, and they said it themselves. If you don't pull over, they'll do a car chase down the highway. So the escalation itself, I think, is the essence of this principle, that if you refuse to comply, that puts the authority figure or the government worker or whoever you're dealing with in a basically a position that's called a fork. They have to either choose to ignore your refusal to comply, in which case their authority is undermined, or they have to choose to escalate their use of force against you.
Absolutely true. Those are sort of the principles there, but that are I think a lot of civil disobedience is based on. That when you engage in civil disobedience or non-cooperation with the state, that you put them in a difficult position where they have to choose to either crack down and look like little tyrants, or they have to ignore you and look like they're not enforcing their laws consistently. So either way, they lose the public relations game in that case. And the civil disobedient has to put up with whatever the punishment ultimately will be of that. But certainly the further that you push your disobedience, the more violent they will become. They will, unless they back away, like you're saying. They could back away. But generally, in my experience, they tend to continue to ratchet up the violence until they make their point.
I think that in many cases, they think Western civilization will crumble.
They've said things like that in courtrooms.
They do. They think Western civilization will crumble if they do not get compliance in this instance and every instance. And that, to me, I find fascinating. Is your system of governance so fragile that you must enforce your will every single instance? And let's not forget that this will is often enforced by the lowest level foot soldier in the state's army. People that in some communities, they have a limit on IQ for police officers. Most people do not consider the criminal justice degree to have been the biggest, most difficult degree to get. Oftentimes, you're not talking about our philosopher kings here enforcing the law. You're talking about minions, in movie parlance, stormtroopers.
And it's good. It's interesting you brought up the idea of minions, because that's actually what happened in the Kent State case. Is that you just had these basically recruits or whatever they were put in this position where they ended up shooting their weapons, and not only were they acquitted criminally, but like you're saying, it's like the fate of civilization depends on making sure they're not punished for what they did. The civil case dragged on for 8 years. The financial settlement was paltry. There really just seems to be this idea that it's so fragile that if we even let the lowest foot soldier suffer the slightest amount of having to repay anyone for any wrongdoing, then the whole system will collapse.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.